Yes.
So, yeah. It looks like Yaya, but it's Yahia. Yeah.
Yes,
And so I wrote to him and Connie right afterwards. And I was thinking about, because Yahia had been, pre-pandemic, we were working on doing a little,
Everybody's
tour,
coming
they just
down.
opened.
It's a
And
party.
yeah. I know, it's like starting to get back to normal.
Anyone you want.
So,
Holy smokes.
nice to see you. I know.
I know. But
Yeah, so, it was the last time he and I had been talking a lot was just before, prior to the pandemic, when we were talking about going in and doing a little tour because they wanted to show us. Remember that? Yeah, and then to have this happen. Hope this is just the beginning of some good things.
thanks for coming in.
Well, I told Larry I had my Vaxiversary was Tuesday. So.
Vaxiversary, is that what we call it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm calling it. My 2-week Vaxiversary.
I got a sister-in-law who lives in Ohio.
Oh.
And
Dan, are you sitting here?
I know Laura's here too.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
in college students before they go
I'm not too
back
close.
home.
No.
huh?
So if you live even out of state.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a good idea.
Wow.
Because if your state isn't up and you're going to come back, Ohio to attend school,
Yeah.
you'd be done.
Quinn just, let's see, he's finally he got his, but it was a little harder because he didn't fit into any category, and he's in Virginia now. So if he had just moved from the Maryland side of DC over to the Virginia side, he actually probably would have got it sooner on the Maryland side than he did on the Virginia side. And then you drove all the way. Because you were in when you got the call, weren't you?
I got the call. I was in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially at that time, it wasn't that long ago that I thought it could be, who knows when, like it may not be till the fall. And so, yeah, I would have done the same thing. Like, if you have the chance to get it, get it. But Larry, don't you know you couldn't make those people sick? So
Well, a lot of people
Yes, I know. Well, and to be honest, that's one of those things. Well, that's probably not considered essential, but you think about how difficult it was for so many families to, when they like just not being able to have the whole do a funeral. It's well, we stopped meeting for a long time. And then in the summer, we were meeting, but we couldn't do it indoors, and we couldn't do, like, we'd always have people sign in and sign out. So that way, like, just say, I mean, when there's like 40 of us out running, you want to make sure everybody made it back okay, just in case it got hurt, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But we stopped because we didn't want anybody sharing. So we would meet in the parking garage. So then you know, and if there's a, you know, and they had to stand by their car, we took the picture, and then you know, okay, if this car is gone, you know, oh, Ed made it back okay. Yeah, but,
There you
I
go.
mean,
So it will do it when you talk.
well,
The
that'll
best
be
thing
nice
is
when
to
you
just
don't
leave it
have
like
to
that.
speak.
And just don't
I'm
yell
glad it's
when you're talking.
just, like even just
Yeah,
this.
I do
it's,
too.
You know,
If you want to, but then when you taking just
How have you been, Nancy?
was it on
Yeah.
now?
Yep, you're good.
Hannah graduates in May.
Smiling at you, Shelley. Just like, you looked over and I smiled and I was, you can't even see. We are going into
College,
next week is
so-
the last week of classes, and then we do finals.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. It is 5:31, and I am going to call the City of Moorhead meeting to order. My name is Shelley Carlson. I am the mayor of Moorhead. Moorhead City Council is holding its regularly scheduled meeting using virtual meeting technology under emergency declaration due to COVID-19. I am in the city council chambers with the city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and a few other staff members. Some council members are attending remotely, while some are also in chamber with me. Any public comment received prior to this meeting will be read as part of the record during the applicable agenda item. The public may participate during the meeting by calling 218-299-5001. Public input will be taken by a staff member and provided to me to be read during the meeting. Or you may request that your call be bridged to the virtual WebEx meeting and speak directly during our public hearings or citizens addressing the council agenda item. Again, the public comment line is 218-299-5001. And if there is no answer, please leave your message and a callback number. And again, this is for our April 26, 2021 City Council meeting. So, call to order, and if I could get a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Shelley Dahlquist.
Here.
Matt Gilbertson.
Here.
Laura Caroon.
Here.
Deb White.
Here.
Larry Seljevold.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Steve Lindos.
Here.
And Mayor Shelley Carlson.
Here. All right, thank you. If we can all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Before we begin our meeting tonight, I do want to just briefly make a statement about the incident that occurred in our community yesterday at our Moorhead Mosque. I want to say, and something that's been reiterated a number of times, that hate has no home here in Moorhead. It doesn't have a home here in the metro area and doesn't have a home anywhere. I want to send a very heartfelt thank you out to everyone in the community. There were several hundred people who came out to help do the cleanup today, and it was very inspiring to see that from our community. One of the things that I was looking up last night when I kept thinking about this, I looked up a quote by Martin Luther King Jr., and it said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that." And all I saw today was light being shined on the city of Moorhead with our incredible community. This is not something that's going to divide our community. It's something that is only bringing our community together. So again, a huge heartfelt sorry that this happened to our Muslim family, our Muslim neighbors, coworkers, friends, community. This is unacceptable, but our law enforcement is investigating this with the FBI, and we are going to, as Chief Monroe said, this is a solvable crime and this person will be brought to justice. So thank you all for that. Moving on to number 3, agenda items. Do we have any agenda amendments, I should say, not items, amendments? City Manager Molly. I can hear you, so I'll just say that there are no agenda amendments. Thank you very much. And on to our consent agenda. Do we have, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approve. Deb White.
Councilmember White approves. Do I have a second?
Lindos will second.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, if I could get a roll call, please.
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Gilbertson, Caroon,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seljevold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Lindos.
Yes.
Right, items on consent agenda have been approved. Moving on to recognitions and presentations. I'm going to read a proclamation for Bike Month. Madam Clerk, do I have the, where is that?
Should be in the packet.
Thank you. So this is the official proclamation of the City of Moorhead, State of Minnesota. Whereas the bicycle is an economical, healthy, convenient, viable, and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent form of recreation and enjoyment of Moorhead's scenic beauty. And whereas the citizens of Moorhead will experience the joys of bicycling during the month of May through Bike to Work Week and Bike to Work Day. And whereas Moorhead has scenic bike trails that attract bicyclists from all around the Fargo-Moorhead area, and whereas these bicycling activities have potential to stimulate economic development by making the city attractive to businesses and citizens who enjoy the outdoors and healthy lifestyles, and whereas creating bicycle-friendly communities has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, to boost community spirit, and to reduce pollution and congestion. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Shelley Carlson, do hereby proclaim and recognize the month of May 2021 as Bike Month. I also would like to recognize Councilmember Seljevold for his very lovely bike shirt that he is wearing and bike tie. It looks very lovely and is very appropriate for the proclamation. All right, on to number 6. Approval of the April 12, 2021 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved. Lindos moves approval.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Caroon, Dahlquist,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seldgevold,
Aye.
Lindos,
Yes.
Hendrickson.
Aye.
Right, the meeting minutes have been approved. Thank you. And citizens addressing council. I do have one individual that would like to address the mayor and city council. Or no, this is for agenda item 17, so I will wait until we come to that agenda item. Are there any other citizens, though, that wish to address the council, either in person or on the line?
Hi, this is Lindsay Shonak, and I'd like to speak on behalf of a candidate for Ward 2.
Okay, Ms. Shonak, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. So please go ahead, and I will time you. At the end of 3 minutes, then I will let you know, or yeah, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak on behalf of an individual that is up for the Ward 2 seat on City Council. I have been a resident of Moorhead for approximately 4.5, I think 5 years now. And shortly after I moved here, I came to learn of Heather Niesemeyer. And I came to learn about Heather based on the many activities and items that I'm involved in with the community. Heather has always been there. She's been there at the PB&J lunch fundraiser, working behind the scenes there. She's been working with the community gardens and her school's PTAC. Heather is always there working behind the scenes, and when I thought about the individuals that were running for city council and their attributes and so on and so forth, Heather came to mind, and I reached out to her and encouraged her to run. And I'm so pleased that she took the time to think about it, and she said yes to the call. I would just encourage our council members to consider their support for Heather Niesemeyer for the Ward 2 City Council seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shonak. Is there any other citizens that would like to address the council?
My apologies. I also have Nicole Matson on the line.
Okay. Ms. Mattson, if you could state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I am Nicole Matson. I'm at 3230 4th Avenue North in Moorhead. I think about it for a second. I'm also calling on behalf of Heather Niesemeyer. I have worked with her on a number of community events, and I know her to be a very kind and compassionate person, someone who is really thoughtful, gives a lot of thought to things before she does them, and someone that you can really count on to get the job done. If she commits to doing something, it's going to get done. And I will tell you that I have been involved in a lot of different activities in the community, different volunteer work, and it's not very often that I work with someone that I know that I can rely on the way that I know I can rely on Heather to work hard, to think through things, and to make sure everything that needs to get done gets done, while also being just a nice person to be around and to work with. So I would like to echo Lindsay's sentiments. I know that you have a hard decision to make, and I would really appreciate it if you would consider voting for Heather tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mattson.
Then I also have Kara on the line.
Thank you. Ms. Glow, please feel free to go ahead, state your name and your address for the record, please, and then you have 3 minutes. Ms. Glow?
She just needs to unmute her mic, I believe. So she should just dial *6.
Well, Ms. Glow, I'm not sure if you are able to hear us, but we are not able to hear you. And I think we will move on. If you would like to maybe, can they write in?
Kara, if you are able to hear us, if you dial *6, that should unmute you.
Okay, now I no longer see her. Okay. All right, well, she's not there anymore, so. All right. Thank you, everyone. So moving on to number 9 on the agenda is public hearings. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing for?
Mayor Carlson, she did call back in.
Oh, she did?
Yep, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm not seeing her. Hello, Ms. Glow, are you on? Can you see her? Okay. All right. We're just going to move on. So number 9 for public hearing, do I have a motion to open the public hearing for annexation of relating to 1444 40th Avenue South?
Lindos moves opening public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion or questions? Seeing and hearing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Caroon,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seldgevold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Lindos.
Yes.
And I do have a question, Mr. Shockley. Is this motion and is this for both A and B for number 9 for the public hearing?
Yes, Madam Mayor, you could take both in one motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Robin Houston.
Thank you, Mayor Carlson and council members. Again, I'm Robin Houston. I'm your city planner. The item before you this evening is a petition to annex 1444 40th Avenue South. And as you can see in the packet, this property is completely surrounded by the city of Moorhead. It's just one of those parcels that's, it's like an island within the city. And we have a few of those, few properties that have chosen to stay outside of city limits as our city grows. Unfortunately, this property has a failing sewer. And when the applicant went to Clay County to find out what was required to repair the sewer, Clay County required them to request to be attached to the city because they were so close to city sanitary services. We have followed all the statutory guidelines. As you recall, we just did another annexation in January of this year for another lot in South Moorhead. I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's pretty straightforward. There were no public comments prior to the meeting this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Madam Clerk, are there any comments related to the public hearing, either on the WebEx or anybody in the audience?
None at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Houston. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Lindos moves to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Gilbertson, Caroon,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seldgevold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Lindos.
Yes.
All right. The public hearing has been closed. Do we have any other comments or questions before we vote on this?
I have a question.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Robin, how big is that parcel of land? You know, I drive by it every day.
This parcel, including the right-of-way that would be attaching, is 2.6 acres. The parcel itself is just under 2 acres.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's see here. Do I have a motion to consider actions related to the annexation?
Linda will move to move forward with annexation.
Second.
I have a motion by Lindas and a second by Hendrickson. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing and seeing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Karoon,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seldgevold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Lindas.
Yes.
And the motion to consider actions relating to the annexation of 1444 40th Avenue South passes. Now on to, I believe, number 17 on the agenda is a resolution to approve the 2021 Cass County Vector Control Agreement, and I will turn this over to Public Works Director Steve Iverson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. The mayor said item 17 before you is a resolution to approve the 2021 Cass County Vector Control Agreement. And I'll note that it's a one-year thing versus the 3-year deal that we've had in the past. And that's something that CCVC is doing to get all of the entities that are part of this group on the same timeline. So it's not an anomaly or there's something wrong with our agreement. It's just to get us, Fargo, West Fargo, Horace, and Cass County all in the same timeline. That's why it's a one-year deal. I'll be brief to allow plenty of time for questions and public input. I think what I'd like to really emphasize in your packet in the staff report are bullets 2 and 3 regarding who makes the decision on doing the aerial flights. I think there's been some miscommunication or misunderstanding of how that actually transpires. Granted, yes, CCVC is the authority or the recommending body that recommends when it's appropriate or necessary to do the aerial application. But I want you to understand that it's not solely Ben Prather or anybody from CCVC making that call. He has to get approval from everybody that's part of that agreement. Again, it's us, Fargo, West Fargo, Horace, and Cass County. If we choose to opt out, we can, and that won't, depending on how the other entities recommend or go along with or against the recommendation, we do have that option to opt out anytime it's recommended. So I wanted to make that clear. I think that was one of the questions that came up that maybe hasn't been explained or drawn up very appropriate. So beyond that, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer, but I'd leave plenty of time for public input.
Okay, thank you. We do have one individual who has given a request to speak form. Mr. Miller, if you wanted to come to the podium, and if you can state your name and your address for the record, and then this little contraption here will tell you when your 3 minutes start and give you a warning and when your 3 minutes ends.
Okay. My name is Brett Miller. I live at 425 13th Street North in Moorhead. I would like to ask that the city council considers stopping aerial spraying, or at least increasing the threshold at which we do spray. A couple of notes that I have about that is in 2019, the CDC said there was 8 cases of West Nile, making it the most common mosquito-borne illness. That was 2 decades into the West Nile scare. And in 2008, a decade in, the Center for Public Integrity analyzed 90,000 adverse reactions connected to pyrethroids, which is what is sprayed. It was a 300 times increase in the decade that they started spraying after West Nile. There are other ways that we can address the mosquitoes. Identify standing water, build birdhouses for purple martins, barn swallows. We could have community workshops, get kids involved. We could increase dragonfly populations. Nobody gets hurt by dragonflies. And then spraying hurts butterflies, hurts other pollinators, which we've learned are very important. But it can also be, up to the person spray in your own backyard if you feel like it. Put on off or some natural form or whatever you feel comfortable with. But, you know, local hardware stores and businesses can spray more mosquito repellent stuff. They can spray more supplies for bird feed for purple martins, or people can build bat houses, whatever they see fit. It would reduce the cost to the city, as well as create economic gains for sales of those products. But at the very least, I would ask that we have a better warning system than a tweet goes out, and if you're not paying attention, you're outside when you get fogged, you know. And maybe consider increasing the threshold at which we spray if we do spray, you know. Doesn't have to be as often, maybe. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for coming, and also for bringing your young one too, to kind of see how the city government works. We can get you one. And what, if you would like, if you want to come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, then when you're done, you can complete the form so that we can have it as part of the record, if you don't mind. Okay, feel free to come to the podium, and when you're at the podium, if you can put your mask on if you want.
Yes, thank you. Council members, first I want to thank you all for serving our city. My name is Cheryl Melby. I live at 3210 River Shore Drive in Moorhead, and I've lived in Moorhead on and off for about 25 years. And regarding the vector control, mosquito control agreement, I'm here just to express my concerns about aerial spraying mosquito sprays. I have been concerned for quite a few years. Professionally, I'm a chemical dependency counselor at Prairie St. John's. My husband is a doctor of pharmacy and works as a scientific liaison within the industry. We're very concerned about chemicals, the building up of chemicals. As we know, we live in a chemical environment. We're bombarded by many different chemicals. We're concerned about the long-term buildup that can harm us as humans and other forms of life. Also, just and in the past, Vector would even see, I would email at times, I want to be aware when there's going to be sprayings. If possible, I would leave to visit my family in Detroit Lakes, or I would stay indoors. And I would encourage that to my children as well. And I just want to add this concern again. You know, there's scientific, some scientific concerns, and I know they're working on that and building a case on that for us to be concerned about our citizens. But just telling a bit of a story, our daughter, who is 30 in January, was diagnosed with bladder cancer. And this is a big concern. Bladder cancer is typically diagnosed in men who are heavy smokers at the age of 80. She's an anomaly. They are just very, she was just someone that they said they didn't see women diagnosed like this. However, I just have to share the story that coming back to when it came out in the news about all of these butterflies that died, my daughter, the night that spraying was happened, was sitting outside. She's never smoked in her life. She lives a clean life. We're thankful for that. But she was sitting out with some friends doing a study. The next morning, she walks every day by the river. She lives in Fargo, in between the interstate and the downtown area. Went for a long walk like she does daily by the river. And she just shares the story that she saw this butterfly, weaving around. It landed on her hand, and she thought that was so unusual. She did further walking and came across all of these thousands of dead monarch butterflies. And that just stuck with her after having the cancer diagnosis, finding out that she had the genetic testing and she has no cancer markers. We don't have cancer in our family. I just wanted to share this. I think that it's really worthy to be hesitant and cautious about any kind of aerial spraying. And I agree with this young man that spoke about there are other ways to manage. So thank you, and I apologize if I went a bit over.
Nope, you still had the green light.
Okay, all right, that's good to know.
So,
thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you want to just go over to our city clerk, she will give you the form to complete. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none in the audience, I believe we do have somebody on the line who would wish to speak. Mr. Allen, If you could please state your name and your full address for the record, and then you will have 3 minutes to speak also. Mr. Allen, if you can hear us, we cannot hear
Hi,
you.
am I on?
We can hear you now.
Hello? Okay, great. My name is Joseph Allen. I live at 4417 4th Street South in Moorhead. And I put together some written comments so I could try to stay within 3 minutes because this is a subject of some real concern for myself and my wife. I think we have to ask ourselves who was responsible for the Monarch massacre that occurred last August. And now if you imagine looking in the mirror, I think you'll have the answer. The Moorhead City Council approved the contract with Cass County Vector Control, and the Moorhead Mayor, City Manager, and Public Works Director approved each aerial spraying, including the one in August that killed thousands of monarch butterflies, an endangered species. Less obvious, but also true, was that thousands of pollinators, such as bees and other beneficial insects, were also killed. The citizens who elected you have been trained to expect airborne pesticides and they also bear responsibility along with all the rest of us, all the citizens of Moorhead. Why bring this uncomfortable truth up now? Because CCVC is offering more of the same with a contract that only plays lip service to protecting our environment and our health, meanwhile exaggerating the threat of West Nile virus. But let's talk about aerial spraying. First of all, it's an archaic practice that dates back to a time before we knew about the many bad things that can come from toxic chemicals. Pesticides, even low levels of pesticides, have been associated with higher incidences of disease, including cancer, such as myeloma and childhood leukemia, liver abnormalities, nerve damage, and infertility. Aerial spraying can be ineffective. Mosquitoes return in just a few days, and the number of mosquitoes can even increase due to the pesticides killing off the natural predators of mosquitoes. Aerial spraying may lower mosquito counts for a few days, but there is little evidence that this reduction may have any effect on human disease. West Nile virus was not the reason that aerial spraying occurred last August. This was done purely for nuisance mosquitoes, according to Ben Prather, the director of Cass County Vector Control. The contract for Moorhead in 2021 is really just more of the same. A bit of we'll try real hard to do better, but if not, we may choose to do it the same way as always. Lack of staff in August for vector control and September will still govern the use of airborne pesticides because vector control depends on college students to operate its ground spray equipment. Many cities have banned aerial spraying due to the lack of effectiveness and for health reasons.
Mr. Allen?
Some consider aerial spraying to be government overreach.
Mr. Allen?
Especially when there's no, yes.
You have reached your 3 minutes,
Hello?
so if you want to just wrap it up quickly, that would be
okay.
fantastic.
Well, can I wrap it up? Okay. Basically,
Yep.
I'm saying that we should have more than just the mayor, the city works manager, and the city manager involved in decisions about aerial spraying, and it should be way more public than it has been. I would suggest a very small team of experts, a physician, a biologist, and maybe one or two city council people that would get together to make these kinds of decisions and decide whether we have actual infection of West Nile virus mosquitoes as opposed to just high mosquito counts or maybe some species that they're concerned about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen.
We should only do this as an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I appreciate your feedback. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak on this issue before I turn it back over to Mr. Iverson and see if any council members have any questions or comments?
no more callers at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Iverson, if you want to come back up, and do we have any comments or questions by council? Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it possible for us to just opt out of aerial spraying and keep the rest of the contract?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dahlquist, short answer is yes, but I would strongly urge against considering that. Again, we're not required to fly. We have a say in whether or not we fly, and we can talk about all those parameters or trigger points that we can manage ourselves when we think it's appropriate or absolutely necessary. I would strongly urge you to keep the retainer fee so we have that tool in the toolbox if and when West Nile and all the other parameters that we can, determine internally with input from you. It's very important that we keep that tool in the toolbox. We don't necessarily need to use it every time, but I think it's very important we keep that option. Once we give it up and we do have a massive outbreak and major health concerns, pretty likely that they'll be flying in Aberdeen and Jamestown and Bemidji and we'll be left out.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lindas. Councilmember Lindas, I think you're on mute.
Okay, so I clicked the wrong button, but thank you, Director, for your work on this. And so I guess one question, just because I'm reading the contract, it does say 3-year 2018, 2019, 2020 on item number 1. I assume that was just needs to get adjusted to 1 year, as you mentioned before, or is that something I'm just not understanding?
No, you're correct. That's a typo I caught too late as well. It should say 2021.
Okay, so, and I appreciate the idea that it's a 1-year contract gives us some leeway to actually try and investigate. So I think I've shared with you my concern that the current level that Cass County Vector Control uses to discern whether or not we're in a health emergency is quite precipitous. It goes from low to high. And I've been trying to do a little bit of research, and South Dakota has a much more nuanced indicator dial. And even North Dakota Department of Public Health has a more nuanced dial. And so I guess what the question I have is, how many times did we actually aerial spray because of pandemic or public health emergencies, and were we actually aware of what those were? And I know you're new to this, so I'm not sure if you have that information or not.
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Lindas, Councilmember Lindas, I too am new at this, but I will find that out. I believe, in speaking off the record with Dan earlier, we flew 3 times last year. Typically, it's anywhere between 2 and 4, but what the actual data or what the trigger point was on West Nile being prevalent in those counts, I'll have to follow up with you on that, Councilmember Lindas.
So I don't have data from 2020. I have data from 2019 from the North Dakota Public Health, and looking at the data. So there's roughly 40 species of mosquitoes that occur in the Red River Valley. There's only one generic Culex that is the primary transmitter of the West Nile virus. Of that, there's only one species in that, Culex tarsalis, that actually is the primary vector for West Nile virus. And the counts of that mosquito were large, but dwarfed by other species. And there was no indicator of West Nile in what's the normal location or reservoir of the disease, which is birds. And so the CDC, in fact, has a great repertoire of what they call their One Health initiative, which is really looking at recognizing that human health is not independent of both environmental health, but also the health of the animals that are living in the ecosystem with us. And so using animals as indicators, looking at what the infection rate is in birds and horses to be able to figure out if we have a health issue that's coming up. And so what I've not seen, and I'm going to ask you the same question, do you see that Cass County Vector Control has some of these, what I would call more nuanced measures in their decision matrix?
In your packet, page 2 of 2, the highlighted portion talks about veterinary cases reported. I think that is speaking towards what you're looking for, other animals other than just the raw mosquito counts. Talks about transmission activity in birds. So that's threshold 2 of the 0 through 3 of when that's taken into consideration.
Right, and that gets into the state or the kind of matrix that they use, which is quite precipitous, where you could have more ands versus ors in that. So what I was kind of getting at was I'm not seeing where they have nuanced the numbers of cases and tracking that, because that I think would be extremely useful for us to know whether or not we're actually having a health concern or not. And I guess the last point is using our best practices. If you're really trying to knock down the Culis tarsalis species of mosquitoes, it is active at night. And so you should not be spraying at all when it's light out. You should wait until after dusk to be spraying for that, which has not been the practice predominantly that we've actually been using. And so I recognize that there is a great desire to have, or I should say, get rid of nuisance mosquitoes. And I'm not a big fan of mosquitoes and getting bit. But I'm also recognizing that if we're talking about using aerial spray to knock down or address public health emergencies, we're not following best practices. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindas. I would like to request at least a 1 credit of a science credit from MSUM with that. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Iverson? Councilmember Seljevold.
Well, the idea of having the city manager and the mayor and the public works director sounds pretty good, but people change. Mayors decide not to run or not. And so the other thing is that none of these people are experts in vector control. So what do you turn to? You turn to the experts who are have the same chart that we've been following. So they're going to say, it's time to spray. You're not experts, so you're going to say, okay, let's do it. I think this pandemic has taught us that we have to be prepared for a lot of things. I think that we need to have in the toolbox aerial spraying, but I think Moorhead has to develop a threshold that is much higher than the other people use. Reading the report that this attachment came from, the reduction plan was a CDC report. I mean, it goes from none to low to high. There's no in between or even, and then it just says outbreak in progress. And, if there's a West Nile case, it's not only, it's where is it occurring? If it's in Horace, kind of what I understand, it's not, we got a pretty good chance of being pretty safe from it. So what I can see us approving this contract, but then as a small committee has been suggested, say, these are the parameters that Moorhead's going to use. And so when they call and say, are you in? We can say it hasn't met our threshold. So, and I would like a very, pretty high threshold, but that discussion has to come. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Selderveld. Councilmember Kroon, and then Councilmember Gilbertson.
Is there a way that we can work more with the CCVC to really talk about what that means to spray later at night? In the packet, it mentions that they will work to delay operations as late as they can after dusk and still be effective. And I feel like that would help, first of all, help minimize the amount of people who are outside and potentially being sprayed on and being concerned about that. But also it helps with that communication piece. If people know that they're going to be most likely at home inside by that time, that cuts down on that exposure as well. So I agree with Councilmember Selderveld that we need to continue this conversation no matter what happens tonight. But if there are some things that we can do right now to reduce some of those risks, that would be great to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kroon. Councilmember Gilbertson, and then Councilmember Dahlquist. I believe that's a new hand up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Director Steve. So we look at this regionally, right? That's Cass County and the other cities in Cass County. It's Moorhead. Is there Clay County doesn't have a part of the vector control?
Just the city of Moorhead.
Just the city of Moorhead. Okay. And when they spray Fargo, Moorhead, they spray all at once, right?
Correct.
So the other thing we've learned in this thing is virus is a virus. And if we see a West Nile virus case, it might be too late.
Potentially.
So I prefer to have, when they're going to spray it all at once and be done with it. So thank you.
Right, Councilmember Dahlquist, and then Councilmember White.
Thank you, Mayor. I propose, being this is a one-year contract, we eliminate the aerial spraying this year and we review it next year. We are not in control of the time that they spray, being that it would all be done at once, and pollinators don't have a clock that they look at and say, 8 o'clock, I'm going to bed. So we saw the damage last year, and if we lose our pollinators, we lose our food. And you can grow as many pollinator gardens as you want, but if we spray and kill them, it hasn't done any good. So that's I propose we eliminate the aerial spraying this year, review it next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dahlquist. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree very strongly with what my colleague from my ward said, and I think this would be a reasonable compromise that, we're looking at one of the tools in the toolbox. There's other things that we would continue to do with them, so we would have a contract with them, and we would still be doing truck spraying. We would still be doing a lot of the other monitoring and things like that. But, I can't think of many things that have gotten that people have raised more concerns about than our aerial spraying, and we've heard it repeatedly. And so if we're being responsive to our citizens, we really need to think about the impact of this, and are we really, are we making decisions that reflect their interest? And I do think that, this is a one-year contract. The one thing I could see based on what our Public Works Director has said is that I can see including it in the contract, but only with a very high threshold. And so, because I agree, we don't want to eliminate that completely. Let's imagine that there is truly a widespread pandemic. If we have already eliminated that as a possibility, that would create some more challenges. But if we were to say we will have a much higher threshold, we will restrict the times of day that it can be used, and it will only be used when we have clear evidence of a serious public health risk, such as several documented cases of something like West Nile virus. I think something like that would be a very reasonable way of approaching it, and it may mean that we don't need to aerial spray at all within the next year, and then in a year we could evaluate that and see how that worked for us. But I think something like that would be a very reasonable compromise. And also, it allows people, if we are then still continuing truck spraying at times, that allows people to opt out. So that gives citizens the right to make that decision for themselves. Whereas when we do it through aerial spraying, it is not selective. We all, nobody has any choice over whether or not that plane flies over their house. And so I think this allows us a good way of addressing some of those concerns in the short term, and then we can reassess in a year or two.
Thank you, Councilmember White. And Councilmember Lindas, your hand is up again.
This time I'll unmute correctly. Yeah, I'm looking at the contract as it's written right now, and I can't approve of it, mainly because I don't feel like even leaving in aerial spraying as a last-ditch resort effort is there's too many pieces that we need to change, and so I would rather just take and opt out of the aerial spraying. It's not really needed, and if we did have a pandemic or something that was a health emergency, I am absolutely 100% positive that we could get together and we would be looking at the science and be going, yeah, we're going to address this, and we would address it. And so I right now I'm very uncomfortable with the way it's written. I understand, and I actually had proposed a more nuanced approach to this. It didn't get put in, and so at the current time, I'm having a hard time that I would, supporting this contract. Just there's too many things that would need to change.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindas. Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I remember the mosquitoes back in August, and they were terrible. You couldn't go outside. And once the aerial spraying happened, I know it decimated the butterfly population, but the mosquitoes disappeared. And I've known, there's people who've been close to me who've had West Nile virus, and it is a terrible, terrible disease, and it lasts, and it keeps lasting. So I still think we should aerial spray this year for the one-year contract, but I think we need to find alternatives. Maybe, and I remember this for about 5 years ago, or we directed I don't know if it was a committee, but we directed them to look in the Twin Cities, because I don't think the Twin Cities air sprays, and they have a pretty good control on their mosquito population, so maybe we can learn from other cities. But right now, I think we do need to do aerial spraying, because I just remember the mosquitoes were terrible, and like I said, I did have family members and friends who have had West Nile, and it is just crippling, and it's a terrible disease. So I would vote for the one-year contract and to keep the aerial spraying going. Thanks.
Is that a motion, or is that a?
No.
No? Okay. Councilmember White.
Since I know Councilmember Lindas mentioned that he had suggested some more nuanced ways of looking at it, and it seems like there's a lot of concern about the contract as written, would it be possible to table it and then work on some revisions where we could come back and say, these are the things that we would be more, now that we've heard some feedback, these are the things where we would feel more comfortable, of maybe a threshold that would work for that we would apply in Moorhead, and then vote on it at that time?
Mr. Iverson.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council Member, it doesn't seem unreasonable. Ideally, it's rained, it's spring, they're going to start field testing and limited larvicide in some areas potentially in the next week or two. But given the sensitivity and importance of this, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. Sounds like Councilmember Lindas has some legwork, and I can do some digging on metro practices, and
I'll move to table.
Yeah.
Okay, and for those in the audience and listening, moving to table means that the discussion ends and we are done. Thank you. Public, no? I thought that's what it did. Oh, I need a second.
Second. And a vote.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, so Councilmember White has tabled the motion.
Can we ask a question real quick?
Yeah, well,
I know there's a table, but it hasn't been seconded yet.
Okay. Always learning Robert's Rules of Order here.
Oh, no problem, Madam Mayor. Is there like a concrete time frame for this? I mean, what's the latest we could figure something out?
I'd like to have it buttoned up by the next hearing, but in reality, aerial spraying doesn't happen until July. So if it went another month, another 2 hearing cycles, I don't think that would be the end of the world. Give us some time to do some background and get the parameters and the different nuances that we need.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a motion to table that is on the table. Do I have a second? Councilmember Seljevold.
The aerial spray contract said they wanted it like last week. And so, I mean, I don't know if they're ordering, if they can go forward knowing that Fargo and West Fargo and Horace has approved it, and that, I don't know what it involves on their end. But in our literature, it said that they wanted it signed and back by April 20th, and we're past that date, So I don't know what they need. I mean, so.
City Manager Molly.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We are past the date when they're asking for the agreement to be back. That is true. My understanding is 95% of what Cass County Vector Control does is the larvicide work, ultra low volume sort of activities, and aerial is a very small percentage. But the Councilmember Seljevold makes a fair point.
Okay.
I have a new hand.
Oh, Councilmember Lindas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess one of the things that I would like to propose is we approve the contract opting out of the aerial spraying, and then we work on the aerial spraying and see if we can come up with thresholds that would be agreeable. In fact, that would give Director Iverson more time to actually look at all of the other cities around us and in the Twin Cities who don't have problems with West Nile virus. And sidebar, West Nile virus is not something that's trivial. I'm not trying to trivialize it, but it's endemic in our environment. And, we have to look at the risk tolerance that we have. But we have a lot of other big cities that don't have problems with West Nile, and they're not aerial spraying. And so my proposal would be we move forward with the contract, but opt out of the aerial spraying, and then come back in 2 weeks potentially, or even a month with a proposal for aerial spraying.
I second.
I'm not sure that was a motion or just a discussion.
That was actually a motion, and I was going to ask if it was easy to be able to flip which parts we would knock out, and that's the only thing I hadn't done is gone through and figure out which bullet points to eliminate.
I'd like a point of information. I'd like to second the table.
Yep. Okay, we're going to pause here for a minute. Mr. Shockley. Your mic is not on.
So the motion to table was first in order. So if you have a second to that, it's non-debatable. You'd need to vote on that. If that doesn't pass, then you could take up other motions.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. So I had a motion and then I had a second with Councilmember Seljevold. Could I get a roll call vote on that motion? And I'm not sure if you want Councilmember White to state the motion again, or if you guys are good with that. Okay, let's do a roll call vote then, please.
So this roll call vote is...
Wait, but that wasn't completed. There was another motion made and seconded before there was a second on the tabling.
Mr. Shockley?
Well, you had a motion to table that was actually on the table. I believe the mayor was calling for a second, and you had some brief discussion, and then that motion wasn't resolved before you got another motion. So you would take it up in order of priority. You could certainly vote down the motion to table. That's perfectly fine, but you have a motion sitting on that somebody had made.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion to vote, this is the motion to table. Shelley Dahlquist,
No.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Caroon,
No.
White,
No. That's fine.
Seljevold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Lindos.
No.
So the motion to table did not pass. And now there is a second motion on the table and a second to that motion.
Well, you should, Madam Mayor, you may want to just restate the motion and ask if the person who made the motion and the person who made the second are still okay with it.
Yes, so Councilmember Lindos, could you please restate your motion? And if you're comfortable with that motion, then Councilmember Dahlquist, you could make a second at that time.
Yeah, so my motion is to approve the contract with Cass County Vector Control, but removing all aerial spraying from that contract.
And Councilmember Dahlquist?
I just want to verify that there was discussion of discussing alternatives.
That was not in the motion, no.
Okay, all right, but I'll second it, yes.
Okay, there's a motion on the table and a second. Discussion points. Councilmember Gilbertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in doing this, Steve, are we planning on actually talking about aerial spraying then at the next meeting, that we can still use that as a toolbox, just want it changed?
Absolutely. I would hope that Director Iverson would be given now the space and time to be able to look at and work out possible scenarios and come up with a much better nuanced approach for how we would address aerial spraying. Essentially address what Council members Seljevold and White talked about with having a better rubric for our decision matrix that we're making in Moorhead.
Okay, Councilmember Seljevold.
Steve, I'm a little unclear. You're saying we're opting out of aerial spraying this year. We're looking at options for the following year.
And I think you guys need to address either Public Works Director Steve Iverson or Councilmember Linda, since they both are called, both have first name Steve, and it's getting a little confusing.
Lindos, I was, you are saying we're just no aerial spraying this year at all?
I want to approve the Cass County Vector Control contract right now so they can move forward with the larval. 95% of their work is with larval mitigation, and the aerial spraying, as Director Iverson said, doesn't occur until August, and so that will give us time to actually consider what sort of aerial spraying parameters and then vote on that separately. So we can still do aerial spraying, but we need better parameters.
Councilmember White.
And that helps to answer part of why I voted down my own move to table, was because it sounds like what you're suggesting would accomplish the same thing in a slightly different manner. But so we're saying right now that we would pass the contract without that part of it as we work on then some revisions, and then come back with, again, those look at some stricter parameters in terms of time of day, what the threshold would be, and so on. And so, Mr. Iverson, do you feel that would be something that would be workable?
Yeah, that's what I was hearing and where I thought the discussion was going. So that's what we'll do.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councilmember White just asked this, but I'm a big time frame guy, so that's long enough time for you to get that accomplished.
I'll full court press it with the intent of being back here in 2 weeks. And then we'll funnel you all the information well in advance of even the agenda going out.
Okay, and to add the aerial spraying back in is not a difficult task.
I'm hoping not.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
Yes, I don't think it'll be an issue. We'll do my best to make sure it's not an issue, and if it is problematic, work with Dan and the mayor on damage control or whatever we need to do to keep the wheels on the wagon in the interim.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iverson.
City Manager Mully, did you have a comment to say? Okay, oh, sorry. All right, I have a motion and a second on the table. There's been discussion. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing and hearing none, could I get a roll call vote, please?
And just for clarification, Madam Mayor, the motion is to approve the resolution of the 2021 Cass County Vector Control Mosquito Control Agreement with removal of all aerial spraying from contract. Dahlquist?
Yes.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Caroon?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Seljevold?
Aye.
Hendrickson?
No.
Lindas?
Yes.
All right, the motion has passed as stated by Councilmember Lindas. Thank you. All right, moving on to number 20. And also, thank you, Mr. Iverson. Wow, he already got it. Oh, no, you're right there. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. And Councilmember Lindas, I was serious that I would like that 1 credit of science from Moorhead State. On to number 20, a resolution to appoint the Ward 2 council member. Oh, I apologize. There was also a statement that needed to be entered into public record from Noel Harden, and I would like to direct the city clerk to add that in. It was in regards to the vector control contract. Thank you. So number 20, the resolution to appoint Ward 2 council member. I want to first thank each of the candidates for taking their time to complete the Ward 2 application, participate in the interview process, and engage with council members these last 2 weeks. I also want to reiterate how wonderful it has been to see so many residents interested in serving the city as a Ward 2 council member. Active participation and engagement are keys to a successful, healthy city government process, and 6 applicants show the community spirit we have in the city of Moorhead. As noted at the last council meeting, city council members have reviewed all of the applications. Additionally, each listened very intently to each candidate's response to the interview questions posed last week. I appreciate, and as well as the council members, appreciate how each candidate took the time to share more about themselves and their views during that interview process. During the last 2 weeks, council members were able to continue to dialogue with all of the candidates, asking follow-up questions and gathering additional feedback. Members of the public have also reached out to council members with support for candidates, and council members engage with citizens to collect their thoughts and concerns. I would say that this has been a very robust process with a significant amount of community input, and I want to thank everybody for that. The reason that I say all of this to the public and to the members of the audience here is that so you are aware of the fact that council members have done a full vetting of each candidate and have come to tonight's meeting ready to determine who they will appoint to fill the Ward 2 council member seat. So with that, is somebody on the council willing to make a motion to nominate someone for the Ward 2 vacancy? Councilmember Gilbertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to the 6 qualified residents that nominated or that came forward to fill the vacant spot. It was truly a good process and enjoyed going through it. Hopefully, don't have to do it again anytime soon. But based on the skill set and the leadership role that this person has and the time of need that we need it now, I would nominate Dave Marquardt as the Ward 2 replacement.
Okay, do I have a second for Mr. Marquardt?
Second.
Councilmember Seljevold. Okay. Discussion and comments. Councilmember Lindas's hand was up, and then Councilmember White.
Yes, I would like to nominate Heather Niesemeyer for appointment to Ward 2 council seat.
So I have, Mr. Shockley, do you want to provide some input on, I have a motion and a second, and then during the discussion of that motion and second, I got another motion and a second. Nope.
All right, thank you. Madam Mayor, you're kind of in an unusual circumstance. You didn't ask for nominations from the nominations, so you have a first and a second. So you have that motion right now, and then you have somebody else that is making a motion. Typically, you would take motions in order of precedence, and so you already have one motion on the floor. As the chair, you could certainly call the question on the first motion. If that doesn't pass, then you could move to a second motion and ask for another motion, or it's really up to you if you want to reopen the process for nominations from the council.
I apologize. I thought we were actually doing nominations from the council, because that's what Councilmember Gilbertson used, the term nomination.
Okay, so if I have 2 nominations and 2 motions, I could ask for if there's any other nominations, and then we would go and ask for a vote on each of the nominations.
Well, what I would suggest is the person who made the first and second would agree to withdraw that, and then you would take nominations from the council, and then you would vote on each of the nominations. Keep in mind, if one of the nominations gets a majority, they would then be appointed. So I don't know if it matters what order you take up the nominations, but just keeping that in mind.
Okay. Well, this is fun. Well, I'm going to turn it back to the Councilmember Gilbertson and Soldevold. Are you wanting to withdraw your motion? And we would have both of the nominations on the floor, and we would go that way, or what are you folks wanting to do? Councilmember Gilbertson.
Well, I meant mine as a motion, and if I didn't know there was a actual difference, but I would move to, approve Dave Marquardt.
Okay. And Councilmember White.
We can't hear.
I was asking if clarification on the process. It doesn't seem right now that there's an opportunity for any discussion by council, and so I was wondering if it would be possible if the council were to, if we were to open it for nominations, and then just those who are nominated could then be discussed, and then we could have a vote.
Then each of you would need to, Councilmember Gilbertson and Councilmember Lindas would need to each withdraw their motion.
Correct.
In order to do that.
Okay.
I'm happy to withdraw my motion so that we can actually have a nomination and discussion.
Councilmember Gilbertson.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so we have, do I have nominations? I think we'll just take nominations to narrow it down from 6. Councilmember Karun.
I nominate Evan Belko.
Do I have any other nominations?
I nominate Heather Niesmeyer.
Any further nominations?
Dave Marquardt.
Okay. Any other nominations? One last time, any other nominations besides Mr. Belko, Ms. Niesemeyer, or Mr. Markort? Okay, seeing none, we have 3 nominations on the floor. And then I'm looking at you, Mr. Shockley, again.
Typically, when you take nominations from the floor, you would ask the person who made the nomination to speak in favor of the reason they made the nomination, and then you would proceed to your vote. Normally, in a large deliberative body, you would need a second for nomination, but since you're only 7 members, you really don't need a second for nomination. But typically, the person who makes the nomination would speak in favor of it, and then the chair would start calling the question on the different candidates.
And then would it be a roll call that each council member would state the person that they would be voting for? Okay. All right. So Councilmember Karoun, you have nominated Mr. Belko. Could you please state your reasons as to why you nominated him?
Of course. I believe that Mr. Belko has a great passion for Moorhead and is a level-headed, caring person that cares deeply about this community, has background in leadership and service to Moorhead, and would be a great asset to our council and help us in really telling the story of Moorhead, which I believe is something that we are definitely in need of.
Thank you, Councilmember Karoun. Councilmember White.
Mayor, I listened really closely to the candidates when they were interviewed, and just thinking about some of the key issues that we talk about in Moorhead that are affecting our citizens. And there was a couple of key things. I think, first of all of the candidates did a great job and clearly have passion for serving our community. But there were some things that really stood out. So, for instance, 2 things that I jotted down immediately were that Heather Niesemeyer was the only person to bring up the issue of affordable housing and childcare. And those are 2 things that we have talked about repeatedly as key issues that are affecting our community. She's also done a lot of work to help with food insecurity issues. The PB&J project was just one of those. But one of the things that I found so impressive with that project was that it was a creative way of bringing together many partners in our community. And I've been working for more than a year on the Resilience Project. And one of the things that we know in terms of building resilience in our communities, we need creative solutions and we need to be working together. And so this project was a great example of it. It was a project that brought together our business community, our citizens, our local government, and on a creative way of let's get together and raise funds on a fun social project to start off with for kids that can't afford to have a school lunch. And then they took it a step further and worked at policy change. And those are the kinds of things that we need. We need those kinds of creative solutions to look at addressing some of the problems that we have facing our community. And I know that those are just a couple of examples of other things that Ms. Niesemeyer has involved with. It was great to see the outpouring of different letters. We had 1 negative letter, and then I've lost track of how many positive letters we received about Ms. Niesemeyer since we had our meeting. And they brought up things like the Joy Project that she was involved with, where she helped put together meals for people who were homeless or living alone for Christmas. She helped to organize ways to get resources for people who were in need during the pandemic. So I can tell you, I've known her since she was a student at NDSU, and she is somebody who is incredibly hardworking, incredibly driven, very diligent, but cares deeply about her community. And so to me, while I thought we had a lot of very strong candidates, just the overwhelming amount of work that she's already done to help her community. And again, the way she really works at bringing people together from throughout the community and addressing, in particular, the needs of those who are marginalized. And I think that she will do well at serving all of our citizens of Moorhead.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Councilmember Gilbertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just after listening to to the presentations and reading the resumes and stuff, Dave reached out to me on Friday, and we had a nice long conversation, and I nominated Dave because of his skill set. He went from an educator as a negotiator. He also is a small business owner in Moorhead, and he's the president of a youth softball association that takes leadership to run that type of organization that he's grown over the last 6 years. There's not a thing at this meeting that I've been here for 4 months that doesn't take a negotiator to work through a lot of these aspects. That's why I nominated Dave Marquardt.
Thank you all. Mr. Shockley.
Sorry, still getting used to these microphones. Given that you've taken nominations from the floor and the people who've made the nominations have spoken in favor, then you would call for a vote on each candidate. We'll total up the votes as they're taken. If in the event of a tie vote, then you would have a runoff between the tie. If there's a three-way tie, we'll have to go back and vote again. So,
would this be a roll call on each candidate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with that, roll call, please, on Mr. Balco. And Mr. Shockley, is this a simple yes or no? Or aye?
Yeah, aye or yes or no.
Okay, thank you.
Are we actually doing a yes or no vote for each one, or are we just voting? We have 3 nominations and you just vote for the one you want.
Mr. Shockley, can you clarify, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Lindos. We'll be, because of the way the nominations have come in, we'll take each candidate separately. So if you're in favor of that candidate, you would vote. If there's a tie between two, then there would be a runoff for the top 2 vote getters, or if there's just one clear winner. So.
Okay.
My understanding is that we can actually decide how we're running this, right? Because we're the council. And I don't mean to interrupt, but I know Councilmember Dahlquist has had her hand up.
Oh, I apologize. I did not see that. Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say I was able to speak with all 6 candidates, and I am truly impressed with all of them, and getting down to 3 is difficult, and I want them to all to know, whoever is chosen, voted for tonight, that I was impressed with every one of them. So I wanted to make that comment because I would just hate for someone to think that just because they weren't voted that they weren't appreciated, and I just wanted to make sure that that was known. Also, I am confused too with the voting. Could we just like go through and each council person just state who they are choosing instead of going through, because we don't want to insult people or offend people. I want it to be truly as gentle as possible, and I think if we just stated the person that we are voting for instead of going through and saying yes or no to people. I don't want to say no to people because that is, it hurts me. I would rather be able to just say the name of the person that I am voting for instead of saying no to people when their name's read.
Mr. Shockley?
Madam Mayor, we could structure it that way. The clerk and I would have to keep count, and then it would be the same process in which you had the top vote getter or this 2 people tie or 3 people tie. You may have to have a runoff from that, but it's essentially the same result, but you could structure it that way just as long as it's a fair and transparent process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shockley. Well, Given this feedback, why don't we do this? Do a roll call vote, and when your name is called, state of the 3 nominations who you would like to vote for.
Sorry, I was making my chart.
That's okay.
Dahlquist.
Heather Niesemeyer,
Lindas.
Heather Niesemeyer.
Hendrickson.
Dan Marquardt.
Seljevold.
Marquardt.
David, I'm sorry.
Caroon.
Heather Niesemeyer.
White.
Heather Niesemeyer.
Gilbertson.
Marquardt.
So we have 4 for Heather Niesemeyer and 3 for David Marquardt.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shockley?
And Madam Mayor, with those results, then you would have a resolution to appoint Niesemeyer to the council. You have, she has 4 votes, and as a result, as a majority of the council. So you'd need somebody to make the motion and
Okay.
a second to approve the formal resolution.
Okay. Do I have a motion then?
So moved.
I'll second.
Councilmember White and Councilmember Caroon. And any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Dahlquist.
yes.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Caroon.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Seljevold.
Aye.
Hendrickson.
Yes.
Lindas.
Yes.
All right, congratulations to Ms. Niesemeyer. You will be contacted, and we will swear you in next week at the next council meeting. Moving on to number 21, presentation on a resolution to authorize the diversion authority to issue debt obligation for the diversion project. Oh, sorry, Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I promise I won't be very long tonight. So tonight, we're just doing a overview of a pledge resolution that the intent is to bring it to the council at the next city council meeting. The city of Moorhead, how do we advance? The city of Moorhead is one of the 5 member entities to the Diversion Authority. In 2016, the city of Moorhead entered into a joint powers agreement with the other 5 members, which consist of the city of Fargo, Clay County, Cass County, and the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. Under that joint powers agreement, the Minnesota entities do not pay capital costs associated with the project. Rather, there was an obligation to pay 2% of the operations and maintenance of the diversion project. And the joint powers agreement requires that, in general, the operations and maintenance of the comprehensive project would be partially financed through stormwater maintenance fees. And I just want to be very clear so that anybody that's listening is that there are no special assessments contemplated on the Minnesota side for the project because the Minnesota entities are not paying for the capital costs associated with the project. Under the joint powers agreement, the city of Moorhead would use its best efforts to impose, levy, and collect Moorhead stormwater maintenance fees for the operation maintenance of the comprehensive project. Advance to the next one. So what does the pledge resolution do? As you may recall, over the last year, the Diversion Authority has worked to achieve and get approved for multiple low-cost, long-term capital financings. Go back. We're having technical issues, including an EPA loan in the amount of $569 million. We're currently working on the potential for an Army Corps of Engineers WIFIA loan, the potential for sales tax revenue bonds, and some SRF loans through the state of North Dakota. The Master Indenture of Trust is a very complex document that covers all the financing for the $3 billion project. It authorizes debt obligations to be issued by the authority and to Cass County Joint Water Resource District. You'll note one important thing there is that the city of Moorhead is not being asked to issue any debt. So none of this appears as debt on the books for the city of Moorhead. So just to be clear, there's no debt being issued here by the city of Moorhead. And the reason that we need the city of Moorhead to issue the pledge resolution is just that given the size of the transaction, we want to make sure that there is no stone left unturned and that the member entities have all authorized the diversion authority itself to issue the debt obligations. And so it's sort of like going back to your voters and saying, okay, we're all okay with the diversion authority issuing debt. So the debt obligation does not come back to the city of Moorhead. And in the resolution, it goes through and authorizes those different sources of loans that the diversion authority will be getting. It also acknowledges that the Minnesota entities, and there are 2 Minnesota entities, Clay County and the city of Moorhead, that those 2 entities together pay 2% and of the operations and maintenance costs. And in the joint powers agreement, we didn't specifically divide up the 2% between Clay County and Moorhead, and sort of left that for a future time to decide because we didn't quite know what projects would be located in Clay County versus what projects would be located that directly benefit the city of Moorhead. And in fact, since the joint powers agreement was enacted, we're also going to be undertaking projects in the city of Georgetown for flood control and also some projects in Comstock. So there will be a split between Clay County and Moorhead over that 2%. And that's something that you have 6 years to decide. You don't need to decide that tomorrow. It just acknowledges that 2% that's already in the joint powers agreement. You may ask, what does 2% mean? In the estimates, the total of 2% would mean anywhere from $70,000 per year to a maximum of about $200,000 per year, and that would be split between Clay County and Moorhead. And over when we developed the 2% cost share, we had the city engineer, Bob Zimmerman, look at that, and that amount could easily be absorbed within the stormwater maintenance fees because it's cheaper to fund the diversion operations and maintenance than to build more flood control within the city of Moorhead. Could you advance? And so just the summary, it also authorizes the Bank of North Dakota to act as a trustee. Many of the bond transactions that Moorhead uses does not use a trustee. With such a large transaction, we use a trustee for the diversion financing. What is a trustee? A trustee is a third party that has a fiduciary duty to bondholders, to WIFIA, to the diversion authority to properly handle the funds and make sure the debt service payments get made every month. And so the third-party trustee takes care of making all the debt service payments and keeps an accounting of the inflows of money and the outflows of money. It also acknowledges that the developer and the holders of debt obligations have third-party beneficiaries under the Master Indenture of Trust. And what that means is if somebody was doing something that wasn't appropriate and the trustee didn't step in, then the developers or holders of debt obligations could step in. The city of Moorhead's obligations would remain outstanding until all debt obligations are paid. Remember, that's just the obligation for operations and maintenance at 2%. The 2% number comes straight out of the Joint Powers Agreement. That was arrived upon based upon the Minnesota DNR's evaluation of the cost benefits between Minnesota versus North Dakota. And so there's a real basis for the 2%. And the only number that would be really left to determine is how you split up that 2% between Clay County and Moorhead. And you could, in theory, you could split it 50-50, you could split it 30-70, you could split it 60-40. Commissioner Campbell had suggested that it was a discussion topic about that split that could take place at the MCC JPA board, and then bring that back to the two entities for further discussion about what that split should be. Timing, it is critical to get this approved at the next city council meeting. We intend to go forward with the WIFIA loan. Some significant events start happening on May 13th. The Cass County Joint Board and the Diversion Authority would approve the master indenture of trust, and they intend to approve the WIFIA loan at the end of May, and then close the WIFIA loan in June. And this is a condition precedent to closing the WIFIA loan. At a very high level, the takeaway is no debt obligation for the city of Moorhead, can't come back to the city of Moorhead. This is just authorizing the Diversion Authority to go ahead and issue debt, and it just acknowledges that 2% that Moorhead's already agreed to split with county somehow. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Shockley? I'm not seeing if we.
I have my hand up.
Yeah, it's coming up, Councilmember Dahlquist, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Attorney Shockley. So we're not voting on anything tonight. We will come back. We will return to this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can we get, can you send to us your presentation? I really need to look at things. I need to read them before I can, fully comprehend it.
Certainly.
Excellent.
The clerk is going to send everybody a copy of the presentation. And I purposely tried to keep the presentation short, knowing that it could be a longer meeting tonight. So,
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shockley.
Mayor Carlson,
Councilmember Lindas.
Thank you, Mayor Carlson. I'm going to be fully vaccinated by the end of the week, and so I'm looking forward to being safe, but in person soon. But to go to the question, I guess I was just going to reiterate, thank you for Attorney Shockley for the presentation and for sending the information. And if there's extra stuff, so don't be afraid to put a little more in packet, because some of the terms I think were kind of, you made it very brief, which was great, but I could use a little bit more background on some of the ramifications of the financial ramifications. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindas. Mr. Shockley, so I'm going to put on my chair of the Diversion Authority. One thing to note is that if this does not get passed, this jeopardizes our WIFIA loan and our P3 project. So potentially this could be, and I'm just going to actually turn it over to Mr. Shockley, but this hinges on the entire project.
Correct, Madam Mayor, and I'm happy to sit down or call anybody who wants to talk about it. The key takeaways from Moorhead is there's and just being clear, there's no debt being issued by Moorhead. Moorhead is not on the hook for the debt. This is just saying the Diversion Authority can go ahead and issue the debt.
And if it doesn't, what is the date that this has to be done by? Otherwise, the P3 project, which is a $1 billion project, portion of the diversion project, would be jeopardized.
We would need it approved at the next council meeting.
So if it is not approved, then basically Moorhead is going to hold up the entire diversion project. And there would be some very negative ramifications.
Yeah, and maybe just add, for the WIFIA loan, it is very attractive financing. It is about 1.59% interest for a term of 46 years. And so it is the financing that you obtain from WIFIA, you just cannot get in the private market for that long term. It saves the taxpayers in the project. The net present value of the savings is about $270 million. Over the term of the life, it's about $750 million. So it's very significant savings. It's a great program, and if there's ever opportunity for Moorhead to use WIFIA, we'll certainly look at that also.
And then just for clarification, can you explain what WIFIA means?
Yeah, it's there's two WIFIA programs. There's one through Army Corps of Engineers, and there's one through the United States Environmental Protection Agency. WIFIA stands for Water Innovation Financing Infrastructure Act. And what it is the federal government a number of years ago decided that delivery of infrastructure was important and recognized for these larger projects, that financing was becoming an impediment because most private bonds are for durations of 20 to 25 years. And for large projects, whether it's coastal resilience projects, flood control projects, or large water projects like the recent rulings with, and I'm going to get the chemical compound wrong, but PSTA compounds that are in water. Water treatment plants have to be rebuilt and very, very costly. And so the federal government provides a credit subsidies to programs that apply, which allows local governments and regional authorities to get access to debt at the cost of U.S. Treasury rates, which is basically the lowest value capital that you can get in the world, because it's sort of the go-to staple of the financial world.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Shockley, how much is it going to save the taxpayers?
Yeah.
$750 million?
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your great work, and Mr. Paulson, who's the executive director. $750 million is a ton of money, right? And we wouldn't have gotten this done without Mr. Shockley, so I appreciate all the effort. And yeah, we need to pass this because that is a huge cost savings, and it does jeopardize the product or the project. So, like I said, thanks again.
Thank you, Councilmember Hendrickson, and thank you, Mr. Shockley.
And for anybody who's interested in coastal resiliency projects, I certainly can talk about that too, but we don't have many of those issues here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So moving on to mayor and council reports. Do I have any council members who would like to make a report tonight? Councilmember Gilbertson.
Just want to let the residents of First Ward know that we are having coffee with the mayor on Thursday, May 13th, which is Arbor Day, at 6 o'clock at MB Johnson Park. And if you want, there'll be around the Plant the Edible Forest. You can plant from 1 to 3, 3 to 5, or 5 to 7, and then the coffee will be from 6 to 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilbertson. Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to all of the people in Moorhead who have sent me emails. I got a lot of them this time, and one that was different from the others was complaints about the firing range out north of Moorhead. Sometimes it becomes very loud, and I'm wondering if perhaps we can look into some way we can dampen the sound, or maybe even looking into moving it because it becomes very loud. And a lot of people with PTSD are triggered by the gunfire sound. So that was just one of the emails I got that was different from the rest. But I really want to thank people for writing to me, because if you don't, we won't know about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dahlquist. Any other council reports? Councilmember White.
I want to mention at our Human Rights Commission meeting last week, Chris Martin, who's our liaison from MPD, gave a report about their cadet program. And I just wanted to elevate that because this is something that I know has been in the works for a while, and they've now opened it up for applications. But it's such an impressive program, and this is something that will help folks that may be interested in entering law enforcement, and it's it's a paid, they'll be paid to be able to do it. But one of the things that he mentioned is that they are using this to be very intentional about recruiting more people of color, folks from, again, underrepresented communities to serve in law enforcement. And so as we're working on really, trying to diversify those who are serving in law enforcement, I really value the fact that our police here in Moorhead are being so proactive at working on that. And so if you know people that are interested in this, they've actually extended the deadline, and it's now April 30th. If you know someone who is perhaps considering a career in law enforcement, they should definitely check this out. And kudos to our MPD.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Any other council reports? Okay. For mayor report, I do have a few. I wanted to thank the FM Area Association of Realtors for allowing me to speak to their group. And also a thank you to the Fargo-Moorhead Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to do a podcast with them. That was fun, and I can do a podcast off my bucket list. And also thank you to Good Shepherd Lutheran Church for having me speak to them, and the Catholic Daughters of America also. Thank you also to the individuals and the citizens who participated in the Coffee with the Mayor on April 15th for Ward 4. I think we had a very robust conversation during that hour. And then a thank you to Michelle Colvert, who organized an City of Moorhead employee wellness program for Earth Day picking up of trash along Highway 10. And Councilmember White, Lindas, and Karoon were all there. And I think the group that I was with, I think we could have put together a small car. We found a ginormous headlight and many other pieces of an automobile, so it would have been a very interesting looking vehicle. Also wanted to mention that I spoke at the Vietnam Memorial Week over the weekend. First Sergeant, who is also Green Beret, George Wallivan, gave a very moving speech in regards to the Vietnam vets and those who are listening and out there. Welcome home. And then lastly, a new thing that I've started as a mayor of Moorhead is Cash Mob Moorhead, to bring more business to our restaurants in our community. And the first restaurant that will be the recipient of the Cash Mob Moorhead highlight is going to be Legends tomorrow. They're open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. They are only at 75% capacity, so if you can't get in, then do Uber Eats. And if it takes a little while, it means that they are being overwhelmed. Let's overwhelm them and let's be patient. Let's eat them out of all of the food that they have there. That would be the best goal that we would have. And if you don't want to wait, then maybe order or purchase a gift certificate and then go a different day this week. But let's just give them a lot of love from Moorhead. And that is all for my mayor reports. City Manager Molly.
Thank you, Mayor. I first just want to thank all of the candidates for Ward 2 and congratulate and welcome Heather Niesemeyer, who will be sworn in on May 10th here. That was quite a run. From Mayor Judd submitting his resignation to getting a new mayor in to going through the application. So we made it all the way around the track. Thanks everybody for sticking together. I want to take a moment to recognize Community Development Program Administrator Josh Huffman and Governmental Affairs Director Lisa Bodie for just what is a very strong review and audit finding in Moorhead's Community Development Block Grant Program. You can't get better marks from the federal government that oversees that program, which lifted up 892 low to moderate income residents in Moorhead directly. And I think 134 were extremely low income households. So some deep support for during a very challenging year. Just in advance, I'll be thanking them again on the 10th and probably again, but our public works and sanitation crews who are going to be kicking off cleanup week, to actually split into 2 weeks to spread it out. So when you do recycling, that's when we'll be out doing that cleanup. Those folks will go door to door and just, I can't wait to tell you how many tons of stuff they're gonna pick up. So it's good to have that back, and the public works crew figured out a way to get it done. So hats off to them. And then finally, I'm excited to welcome and introduce you to Mike Reitz, Moorhead's new assistant city manager. Mike is joining the team on May 3rd. He comes to Moorhead from the city of Barnesville, where he served as the city administrator since 2009. Mike has worked in municipal government positions all over, city administrator positions all over Minnesota for over 20 years. Mike holds a law degree and a master's degree in public administration. And I just want to say that, regionally, Mike's reputation, credibility, knowledge, and experience is just absolutely top-notch. And we're so grateful to have you. People seek out Mike for answers because he goes out of his way to listen, to help find resolution, and address needs. He's just a problem. He's a problem solver. He's also a minority owner in a national football team. And so we welcome you, Mike, and look forward to working together. So.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Dan said I could just stay there and wave, and after all that he said, I probably could have. I don't have a whole lot more to add, other than it's been very exciting to be offered this position. I can't wait to get started. I'm finishing up my service to the Barnesville community here this week. It's been a good 11 plus years there. It's been a very rewarding experience, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter here with this team. So very excited, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and welcome to the city of Moorhead. We are very excited to have you. All right. Thank you, City Manager Molly. Moving on to number 24, executive session. Do I have a motion to move to executive session pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.04 for labor negotiations?
So moved.
Councilmember Hendrickson moved with Councilmember White second. Any discussions or comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Dahlquist?
Yes.
Gilbertson?
Aye.
Caroon?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Seljevold?
Aye.
Hendrickson?
Yes.
Lindos?
Yes.
We are now in executive session. We are back from executive session. Do I have a resolution to approve labor agreement and memorandum of understanding between the City of Moorhead and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees?
So moved.
Hendrickson has moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Seldvold. Any further discussion or comments? Roll call, please.
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Caroon,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seldvold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
Yes.
Lindas.
Yes.
And the resolution has passed. Moving on to number 25, any new business? Okay, seeing none. Number 26 is citizens.
I had my hand up.
Oh,
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, my water bottle was hiding in your hand. Sorry, Councilmember Dahlquist, go ahead.
I would like to propose that we stop spraying herbicides in our city parks because it's killing the food for our pollinators, and I believe it's unnecessary but also harmful.
Okay, City Manager Molly.
Yes, I would like a little time to explore that and talk with our Public Works team. And so certainly could take that and follow up.
Okay. All right, thank you, City Manager Molly, and thank you, Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other new business? Okay, next on the agenda is citizens addressing the council, and I do have one individual who would like to address the council, Lisa Hahn. If you would come up to the podium, please, and state your name and your address, please, for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lisa Hahn. My address is 4140 16th Avenue South, and I'm here to address the council about an issue brought up by Mrs. White, or Deb White, that was brought up about the commission meeting about the new cadet program. And my concern is that there is already an existing cadet program, and a new one is being suggested for people who are diverse. And from my understanding, that sounds like segregation, not integration. And I would suggest that if we're going to expand this vision of diversity and inclusion, that we include people of diversity in the already existing program. And so I would just suggest that that topic be addressed, and also the topic of the definition of diversity, that we're not also segregating other people by including other people, but that it really is truly a diverse and integrated of all people represented in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. And your information has been noted. I will state that our police department prides itself on including people who are qualified. And if they are qualified for our program and our cadet program, they will be looked at and will be included. Thank you. Are there any other citizens who wish to address the council? Nope. All right. Then I am going to adjourn the City Council meeting for April 26th. It is 7:32. Thank you. Have a great night, Moorhead.